CSURAM88 in the building. Peter, how are you?
Dude, Jeff, doing great. Excited to chat with you and love all your content. So it's fun to be here.
I appreciate it. Well, listen, man, there's a lot to talk about. I actually have not had a daily fantasy crusher expert, anyone really in the space. So, kind of breaking the cherry here. This is more of a poker, podcast, although we do venture out, and I've gotten into fantasy a little more over the years. I've always loved it, and it's a pleasure to have you. Going to have a lot of questions, and hopefully we'll get some questions here as well. If you could maybe just give a little bit of background on yourself, but start with poker. You used to play poker. You went to Colorado, hence the CSURAM88. Tell me a little bit about your poker ability, how much you played, and give me that, and then we'll dive into fantasy.
Yeah, well, it's actually how I got into fantasy, is just being involved in poker and was really attracted to DFS because of my poker background. But yeah, the poker boom happened when I was in high school. I played a lot in high school, actually. There's games in like comic book stores. All my friends were playing. I graduated high school in 2006, so obviously like the moneymaker boom was kind of in the midst, and love rounders, all the classic stuff for people my age. I started playing online actually, at an early age too, and in college it really became a good moneymaker. By the time I was a senior, I wasn't like a huge crusher, but my senior year I made well into the six figures, mostly just playing MTTs and sit and goes. I used like Poker Tracker, and really I thought my biggest edge was like understanding shoving ranges and just kind of shorter stack poker in some of those spots. So I played a bunch of tables, really grinded those, and I thought I had it all figured out as a senior in college. All my friends were going to get traditional jobs out of school, and here I am being entrepreneurial, and I thought I had it all figured out given kind of how my senior year went. So it was a good living, but obviously Black Friday happened, and actually a kind of a scary story, which ended up being a huge blessing in disguise. Once Black Friday happened, I started playing like live games kind of around town, and obviously a lot of the poker community was desperate, given that people had money tied up on these online sites, and trying to get that money out was a big challenge. And depending where you had your money, it took a long time. So I started playing these live games, and we actually got stood up. Like the whole scary guns, masks, all this stuff. And had a decent bit of my like cash bankroll taken, which was scary. And I just, kind of realized at that point in time that maybe I should look into something else. So that was actually the time that DFS was not exploding, but at least growing a little bit. FanDuel had come out, and I played a ton of fantasy sports with my friends. I was just so obsessive. I was the guy who was making all the trades and like just trying to do as many leagues as I could. And, I found FanDuel, and kind of the online poker and like bankroll management and just being comfortable putting money online. That background plus loving sports and loving fantasy is the perfect kind of culmination of everything. So it wasn't big enough at the time. I remember like the first week I started playing, the biggest tournament was $25, and I paid $1,000 the first, and I won that like early on in my first week playing, and then kind of choppy waters, made a little bit of money, but nothing crazy. So I ended up taking a full-time job as a stockbroker at Charles Schwab, and when I was there, I love finance. I got a finance degree, really studied poker, but I started bringing my iPad in, and I started to make more money playing DFS. And ultimately was able to quit my job and then pursue DFS full time. So that's a long story, but poker is a huge part of my foundation. I still love to play poker, love watching content, watched a lot of like the Doug Negreanu challenge. I actually bet Chance versus Galfon, which didn't end up working out, but Chance played really great, and still trying to keep up on the scene to a degree. But it was a huge part of my foundation, and an avid poker player, and love the content that you're doing.
It's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's fun. I think the DFS and poker, it's so similar with the lobbies, the heads ups, the double ups, the format. I remember seeing, back in the World Poker Tour in Vegas in 2012 and I think Bellagio 11 even. I forget, but DFS and poker, DraftKings, John Aguiar. And I remember seeing it and talking with them. And I actually, one of the kind of worst beats of my life was I actually had 1% available to buy, I think on the B round of DraftKings. It was like a $250K valuation. Me and two of my buddies, they were much older, much more sophisticated, had a lot. It was a lot of money. For me, it was like $250K. I was going to split it three-way. And I'll never forget, like I put it in front of my friends, they're experts, and they looked at it and there was emails like back and forth for a couple months, and then the final was we're gonna have to pass at this valuation, and that was like early January 2013. I still have the email, kind of have it like, I pull it up. It's a motivator at times. And, it was basically Jason Robbins direct saying, sorry, we'll hope to move and do some stuff in the future. And, again, it's kind of complicated. It was a rocky ride, right? Like it wasn't just, there was some real what ifs, and the valuation, I think it was at 25 million, maybe at 65 post valuation, something like that. So obviously it's done well, but there were some hurdles and some legal stuff and different rides, and it's a little bit unclear exactly how it would have shaken out. But I'm sure it would be a profitable bet, obviously, at that time until to where it is now. Do you have any idea what DraftKings is valued currently? It's like 4 or 5 billion. It's a lot of billions, right? I mean, it did the SPAC and everything.
Yeah, this will not be fun for you. It's worth well over 20 billion now. I actually was a brand ambassador. I knew John. I was actually out in Cambridge in 2013 working for Star Street, which was one of the other DFS operators at the time. The big thing that Star Street did is had big DFS events at the Playboy Mansion, which was a ton of fun. But I knew John and knew all the DraftKings guys, and ultimately I decided to pursue playing DFS full time as like a player, not even anything on the business side, which I was attracted to in 2014. And I was a brand ambassador for DraftKings. So I was fortunate to have exposure to DraftKings, and it absolutely has been a really, really rocky ride. I had helped lobby for DFS here in Colorado, and there was all the uncertainty, and it was definitely a scary time for DFS in 2015, 2016, after the meteoric rise that it had in 2015. So, DraftKings' current market cap is $20.5 billion, which is crazy. And Robbins is a billionaire. So kudos to, he's a billionaire at this stock price, I should say.
Right. Yeah. It is one of those things, and it's just kind of, I feel like daily fantasy, sports cards, NFTs, like these are sort of things, crypto, Bitcoin, these are kind of things as being in the poker world, or this kind of, if you're in the right place, right time, I feel like we have some pretty unique opportunities, right? Like that we've been able to, you kind of see it, you feel it, right? Like you see your friends, you see in college, you see like what people are doing. Now, I have friends that are older. I see what their kids are doing that are like now, I feel like how old are you? Are you you're around 30, mid 30s, early 30s?
Yeah, I'm 33, and all those things that you just mentioned, I'm very interested and have been involved in. So a lot of the poker, gambling, DFS community, kind of the right place at the right time for a lot of these trends. But it is fun, and you're always going to have misses. Like everyone has a story about why they should have more Bitcoin, right? Like everybody. Like my big story was like losing a ton of Bitcoin on that Falcons Patriots Super Bowl, which was the main reason I had Bitcoin initially, was to bet. So there's all these woulda, coulda, shouldas, but I feel like a lot of people kind of in our field have just been very fortunate to have exposure to a lot of these things.
Yeah, that's that game was pretty. I was at that football game. That was pretty crazy, man. That was 28-3, I think, at half, or at some point maybe near the half. And yeah, that's a crazy thing to have any action or be involved. I actually didn't even bet the game, or very small, I forget. But that was just one of those things. You're right. There's so many what ifs. I think poker daily, these type of things really translate well to real life. It gives you a really good risk understanding and to deal with adversity. And actually, one of the articles I saw about you, where it was talking about, I think, where you won the $1 million score and you were in a room or live, and the guy who was writing the article, a friend of yours, maybe it was a Chops or someone was writing it and was saying like you basically didn't really show much emotion. You weren't like celebrating, going crazy. And is that one of your superpowers? Are you able to stay very even keeled, the highs, the lows? Because I'm sure you've missed by half a point or last second plays, and you've also gotten lucky too. So is that something you feel like you do very well? Is don't get too excited or too upset?
Certainly now I think I've gotten a lot better at it. I think I always handled the wins well initially. DFS has crazy variance, as we were talking a little bit before we went live. Like, dude, one thing can swing just crazy amounts of money. And I've been on the right side of that and the wrong side of that a ton of times. But initially, I think I handled the wins really well. And I think poker was a huge part of that, which enabled me to have good bankroll management. And just, I think it was a really good thing. The losses, I would get down to myself a little bit at times. And the nice thing about DFS relative to poker is like you can't tilt Like your games are going, so you're not going to just like tilt off. Like if you're playing poker and something bad happens to you, you can obviously that can impact your play. DFS, you're normally not making decisions again until the next day. So I don't think like I tilted much in DFS, but I certainly like from being around friends and family, like I don't act like any different if I'm winning, but if I'm losing, I might be in a worse mood or maybe not as fun to be around. And I think I've gotten way better at that like over the last couple of years, and I think it's really helped me with investments. But yeah, the winning in DFS is actually a worse, like handling that poorly. I've seen a ton of people go bust. They win a bunch, then they go try to play the best in the world for a bunch of stakes, and like they let their ego get in the way, and basically saying, "Oh, I'm the best in the world." And like, there's just so much variance in DFS that if you have an ego, that's normally going to get you in trouble.
Yeah, I agree. And handle, it's so common in poker too. Some of the best players in the world, they go broke. The bankroll management. There's so many other factors than just being skilled at what you're doing, and other attributes. And obviously, it does kind of shadow poker. I think daily fantasy, a lot of similarities. Talk to me about newborn. You're newly a father. Congratulations. You have a daughter. Is that right?
Yeah, Mary Gracie Jennings. It's the best feeling in the world. We were talking a little bit about that before. So happy to be a dad. She's a little over 2 weeks and total game changer. Everyone says it, all the cliche stuff, but man, she already has me around her finger and I love her so much. And just fortunate to have an amazing wife who's really supportive. And yeah, even in the hospital, there's some funny stories about
I got it on my note. I got to ask you about it. I just got to go right to it. Your wife's name, Ashley Jennings. I saw there's a tweet on February 22nd. Update, I'm in labor in the hospital. Capital. So this is serious. And she tags you that you just went to NBA Top Shot Club. What push present to make up for this? So what's going on? You were on Top Shot. You love NFTs, I guess. Like what's happening here? She was in labor.
Yeah. So I'm obsessed with Top Shot and I've gotten really deep into NFTs as a whole. It's kind of similar to DFS, how it's a convergence of like poker and fantasy. I think this is a really interesting like convergence of sports and crypto and all the things that guys like us are interested in. So I've been fortunate to be kind of early on that, and I've built up a collection, and we've done a lot of content around Top Shot specifically, and one of which is going to the club. And yeah, Ashley gave me permission. She's like, you should do this. She was induced, so it was a really long process. So we were just waiting, and so she was totally cool with it. We knew we were going to play the waiting game. It wasn't like heavy contractions at that point, but she's super funny. Super lucky to be with her. She's somehow puts up with me, and we thought it was a good opportunity to have some fun. And yeah, she's really worth following on Twitter. She roasts me, which I deserve quite often.
Very, very, very cool. I'm into Top Shot. I would love some advice or opinion on that in particular. I think I kind of got in at sort of a weird time. Like I got in right kind of at the top. Like I put in some money, stuff was going well, and then now I'm kind of down a bit on it. I didn't go crazy, but is it fair to say that particular market, like it's sort of in a bear market now? Like what's your overall thought on Top Shot, NBA Top Shot right now, like in particular?
Yeah, so they face some challenging scale issues on Top Shot, specific around like bots and things. And, it was a crazy stretch of time where a lot of the growth was just fueled by people coming in and 10xing their accounts. And that is not sustainable long term, as you know. And so they've recently actually like limited signups. They've had the marketplace close quite a bit recently. So I don't want to say we're in a bear market, but we're definitely in this like phase where they're having some growth challenges. And that's happened a couple times already. I mean, I joined Top Shot in early January, and we've seen some of these waves, but overall adoption is incredible. Dapper Labs, the parent company to Top Shot, which built the Flow blockchain and has a couple projects under that. They originally built CryptoKitties. They just raised over $250 million at a $2 billion valuation. So there's a ton of positive momentum. NBA players are tweeting about it all the time. They're streaming about it. But yeah, I think we're in like the first inning of NBA Top Shot, but the prices accelerated really quickly. So we were definitely in like the later stages of prices for this like first round of mania. So I don't know, like right now, how I feel about like investing like more capital at current prices, but I definitely think we're very early, and it'll be interesting to see how that market evolves. And the same could be said for a lot of these NFTs. The most interesting one is these CryptoPunks. I don't know if you've seen these CryptoPunks at all.
Oh yeah, no, I'm well aware. I mean, I have a few friends that have bid and have some and have done it. I think I see it's actually your Twitter, I believe, profile picture is one here. So which one is this in particular? What does this mean for you? Is this one?
Yeah, that's probably or not probably, that is my favorite punk that I have. I have 5 punks. There's only 10,000 created. So the analogy I like is it's the Bitcoin of NFTs. It was the first project. The developers gave away 9 of the 10,000 punks. Everyone has the same reaction. Like when I first got into Top Shot, I was, just kind of checking out other marketplaces. It was like, well, I just spent 100K on a LeBron Cosmic, but at least I'm not the idiot spending 400K on these stupid pixels. Like everyone kind of has that same journey when they're thinking about punks, but the story is just so compelling. And I think my reason for being bullish and kind of what we've seen recently with the activity is that it's the Bitcoin of NFTs. It's the first one. It's the original. It's the rookie card. There's only 10,000, and there's honestly less than 10,000 with punks that have been burned or inactive accounts. And I love that the developers who really kind of paved the way for NFTs, they gave away 9 of the 10,000 punks. So yeah, we saw in the last 36 hours, 2 sales for 4,200 Ethereum, which at the time was over $7.5 million for one punk. That happened twice in the last 36 hours. In the last 24 hours, there's been like $17 to $18 million of sales, and like all the OGs of like sports betting and some of the poker guys, they are heavily involved. I've had more and more people reach out to buy these, and also have had some of the wealthiest people in the world reach out to acquire these. Gary Vee made a bunch of purchases. There's a lot of speculation that Chamath made purchases. So if NFTs as a whole do really well, these are really interesting. And you can actually see, it seems crazy, but like the cheapest one right now for sale is 22 Ethereum. So a little under 40 grand at the current Ethereum price for the cheapest one.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I know Bob is big into this too. He's got a collection going, and Bob on here. I'm in a couple of crypto chats with him and some other guys, and I've known him for a while. He's interesting. He's just obviously
sharp as a tack, and Mark Cuban was our only investor in FantasyLabs. I have the utmost respect for Mark. He's just he was such a joy to work with. He's been so helpful, and it's great to see Bob working for the Mavericks, and they've done a lot of really smart stuff. I think hopefully they'll get things really turned around. Porzingis' play this year has not been as ideal, but so much respect for H Bob and everything that he's done in sports betting and crypto. And he's a sharp dude.
Yeah, no, he's great. I mean, he'll just come flicking, the £1 million Triton. That was the last time I saw him in person. We were having a nice talk there, but he's playing the Triton million, and he goes for it, man. The guy really got to respect it. He's definitely sharp, and one of the guys that, I mean, is he regarded? Where would you put him in the sports betting sort of Hall of Fame or rankings? Billy Walters, some of these other guys, like where does he rank up in terms of sports betting? Would you say?
Oh, he's way up there. I mean, he's definitely in the Mount Rushmore of NBA sports betting. Was early on some trends. There's a couple trends in particular that have slowly gotten out there that he was early on, and I know he's probably not the happiest that some of these things have been found out specifically, but absolutely the Mount Rushmore of NBA betting. And it's an interesting thing. A lot of the really successful sports bettors don't really talk too much about all their success. There's kind of a disincentive to share information, and he's certainly been private about a lot of things, but no doubt he's one of the pioneers. And for me, I admire him a ton, and just everything he does, it seems like he's extremely sharp. And it's I had a different path, and not even a different path, but I think one thing as a young person, in my early 20s with DFS, I was really interested in the betting side as well as the business side. So I took on a lot of roles to grow the community and wanted to build businesses. And one thing I was cognizant of, but maybe would have done a little bit differently is, I did all this content and I could be viewed as a tout for sure. And, I think that there's a disdain for that for sure. And I certainly have it with a lot of these sports betting touts, but for whatever reason in fantasy, there's more respect for like the analysts, even though it's a similar thing. Like I feel like betting touts and stock touts are like the worst. Crypto touts, they're pretty bad, but fantasy touts for whatever reason don't get lumped in the same way, even though it's really similar.
Yeah, I got a couple legends in the Twitch chat. We got my man Green Eyed Asian, who is he's not using many models, but he's pretty lucky sports guy, better and in there. He's in the mix. And my man Panda85 also, hopefully, I know he was fired up. He wanted to call in. He's like you're his idol. He's one of my best friends, and we have done a lot of fantasy with him. He's one of the funniest guys you'll ever meet. So I hope he joins live because
that'd be awesome.
I'm gonna hopefully he'll be able to at least maybe he'll call in for a second. He get a kick out of that if he's around. But yeah, man, it's fun. This just came to my mind. I don't want to single out anyone, or I'm not you know me. I'm down the center of the fairway. I'm not looking for controversy. That's not what I do. I don't put out clickbaits and whatever. I just want to know, like, Vegas Dave, this guy, he capitalized on the biggest sports card at the time, I think, ever, or when he sold the Trout, right? Then he's recently, I come from the camp. like Jason Kuntz, Josh Luber?
Those guys? Of course. Yeah, tons of respect.
Good buddies of mine. I love what they do. I love how Jason's come in from, done it, worked his way up as he's one of the leading guys in the industry. Gary Vee is kind of on that and those guys camp and over there. And then there's like Vegas Dave, who, speaking about what you're saying, most guys aren't really loud, right? When they're like sports bettors or experts. So I'm not asking you to like go call out, but like, what do you have any thoughts on that? Because he's kind of been smashing the sports card industry, which I thought's kind of messed up because he hit such a the largest ever, and now he's saying it's going to go to it's going to go away, taking the contrarian kind of approach and saying it's a bubble and all this. Like, do you have any thoughts on him in particular, or just generally like these sports pick people? Because like your point, they would, if they're making so much, I don't know, like it's a fine line, right? I guess if you're the best or really good, and you do have people believe in you, but I've heard a lot of like saying it's a scam or this and that. Do you have any kind of thoughts in general? You don't have to say him, but in that sort of space, people that sell.
Yeah, sure. I can stay away from specifics, but I think, the betting side, it's almost all sleazy guys who are selling picks. I mean, there's a bunch of Venn diagrams, like selling picks just doesn't work. I mean, there's one site that was actually Sharp, and they were putting out bet picks. Like 99.9% of the sites putting out just straight betting picks are not Sharp. The one that was putting out Sharp picks started to move the lines, so then the subscribers couldn't even really get the bets that they were originally posting. So it's just a weird incentive structure, and unfortunately, people are attracted like, oh, this guy's super sharp, and the guy you were referencing, Dave, is super flashy, and his methodology, from what I can tell and from what I've heard, is he just gives out like super heavy money line favorites. So most of the time people are winning, but then when they do lose, they lose a ton. And of course it's negative EV. So kudos to him for the foresight on the card. And he's, it's not the way I would ever want to market. I think it's really disingenuous, and I think it's pretty evil in a lot of ways, but got to give him credit for marketing well, strictly from a financial side. But yeah, I hope we see less and less of that. I think it's pretty harmful. And he clearly doesn't care about the people that are, purchasing his information. He's not doing it for the right reasons. It's a self-serving endeavor.
Right. Yeah, it does kind of seem like to that point. I've heard that feedback too. It's like, yeah, it's kind of, if you're minus, 3 or 4 or 500, 600, like, yeah, you're going to get, the picks are going to win a lot, right? That's just the math of it. But to your point, when it doesn't, you lose a lot. And, he seems to does be a master marketer. He has a good, he's got social media and has he puts on a good show regardless of what the results are. It comes across as, he has a plan. He has a marketing deal. But yeah,
I'm always rooting for people to be successful. I think one of the worst things you see in the gambling world broadly, and just in a lot of things in life, is the more successful people get, the more other people try to tear them down. And so I see that a ton with other people. And yeah, no one's perfect. We all make mistakes, but for the most part, I'm always going to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I'm always excited. I genuinely try to be excited, especially you should always root for your friends, even if you're doing poorly. Rooting for your friends, that'll always be the right thing to do. And that's how you build great relationships. And that's, that's what we live for. Ultimately, we live for our friends, our family, our loved ones. So I'm always root for your friends, always root for other people to have success. Sometimes on this extreme end, no doubt that Vegas Dave's been successful, but I think he's really hurting the people that are buying his information. And it's easy. here, take my picks. I'm taking the Chiefs money line and all these things like, they're minus 400, minus 500. Of course, those bets are going to win way more often than they're going to lose, but that doesn't mean they're plus EV at all. It's just you're taking these bets that, you're paying a bunch of money to win a little, and then when you lose a lot, and you lose over time.
Right. Makes perfect sense. I want to understand the Fantasy Labs because I was playing on it a bit, and I'm not an expert in fantasy. I was telling you before the show, I hit with a buddy of mine. We had a pretty nice score. We 3K. We won 80K a few weeks back. And we don't bet a lot. Like, it's fun. We're not experts. We're not using statistics really. I would like to get more into that. Brandon Adams, I'm sure. I don't know how well you know Brandon, but
I know Brandon super well. Well. We do golf trips together, and Brandon and I have spent a ton of time in person together, and he's a good friend.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had lunch with him a few weeks ago, and he's a buddy of mine as well. Super interesting guy, really sharp. I know he knows his fantasy well, and I want to try to mix in a bit more. I don't know the right word, but a little more calculation than just feeling and having fun. But it's all right. Being a field player is less pressure, and we did hit some good scores. I just wanted to kind of ask about Fantasy Labs and how that. I just had it up here. Now I don't. Maybe it's here. Okay, Fantasy Labs. So yeah, could you tell me a bit how this came to fruition? You're and who else? Was Mark Cuban? He was an investor, or he was involved? You're one of the co-founders. Tell me a bit about this and how this came about.
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, I always wanted to be on the business side of the fantasy industry. I briefly worked for an operator, then I was a brand ambassador for DraftKings, which was really fun. It's good to see how immersed DraftKings was in the poker community, which John Aguirre had a lot to do with. But always wanted to start my own businesses. I've done that since I was a little kid with lemonade stands and flipping Pokemon cards, whatever. I've always been entrepreneurial. And Jonathan Bales and I always wanted to do something. He's probably the most well-known author in the fantasy sports space, wrote a bunch of books. He's been really successful in DFS as well. And we wanted to start a company that was different. We wanted to do something that wasn't just, hey, here's our write-ups for the day and here's who we think you should play for the day. We wanted to build a site that basically was a foundation for people to build models, backtest them, and leverage data to make better decisions. So that was the genesis of Fantasy Labs. And we got Mark Cuban involved in 2015, actually during kind of the hardship of the industry. It was a total rocket ship in 2015. And in September of 2015, DraftKings and FanDuel both spent more money individually than like Coke and Geico. And I'm sure you remember 2015, like every commercial was DraftKings or FanDuel. Yeah. And that got a lot of attention. And of course, everyone has the same thing, like, how is this not sports betting or gambling? And then they had the whole issue where a DraftKings employee won a bunch of money on FanDuel, which I know that whole backstory. It really wasn't the industry grew so fast that initially, like early days, all the employees were playing on other sites just to grow the industry and try to learn. You wanted people who were avid daily fantasy players, working at these companies to grow the game. But of course, over time, the industry grows so fast, and then the perception was that these guys were cheating. I know a lot of the story. They were not cheating, but the perception was that, it's insider trading. These guys at DraftKings won all this money on FanDuel, and that got the attention of New York State and basically shut down DFS in New York and created all these issues for the industry. So I actually reached out to Mark and said, hey, we have this growing business. Fantasy Labs was 9 months old at the time. We had a ton of subscribers. We had all these talented people working for us. We were massively cash flow positive. It was a great business. And we were worried because of the macro environment. What do we do? So I just reached out to him for advice. And fortunately, Mark said, hey, let me invest. That'll be a good thing for your company. People will be comfortable continuing to work there with my backing. And not only did he invest, but he then became one of the main figures in advocating for DFS, which was amazing. Mark is just such a talented person and really kind of helped save the daily fantasy industry. So we built Fantasy Labs from there. It's you can build and backtest models. There's a variety of things that you can do. One of the cool things that you'd actually like right now, if you go to golf and then you go to contest dashboard, there you go. All right, so you can actually see the exposures for these different tournaments. So you can go to compare exposures. You can see who all the players in the contest actually pick. So you could go through and say, okay, I think this is one of the best DFS players in the world. who did he play in all these different tournaments. You can check it by tournaments itself. And I know this is like you're just getting used to the platform, but this is one of the cool things that we do. So we have every single DFS contest ever that's been played on DraftKings, and we have almost all the data ever on FanDuel. So you can actually go back and see all these different contests and see what people played. And you can also back test certain models and philosophies and then compare how that would have done using old historical tournament information. So it's a really data-driven approach. Our whole goal was basically to be, and so on this one in particular, you could, if you sort away from that at the top there in the middle, this is for the 7K millionaire maker. That's really small. If you open up like a bigger tournament, yeah, you could do the $20 millionaire maker. That one's perfect.
This is for this week or no? When is
it? For this week, yeah. This is for the. I don't know if you played this week.
Yeah.
So you can see all the different users and who they played. And so you could click on rosters at the top, and you'll see like the people who played over 150. Scroll a little down. Yeah, that one. The rosters. I think if you click on that, it'll sort by like how many rosters people have, like the total. Yeah, so you can see the people who put in 150 entrants for this, and you can see the players that they picked and their exposure, and you could start, seeing how people did. And the other thing too, in like these big contests, is like how many duplicates. So if you click, so there's your teams.
What is this minus 3,000? That's like currently,
because the tournament hasn't ended, so you invested $3,000. So a lot of times people will look back at this. So once the contest pays out, you can see how much people actually won or lost. So if you won the million, obviously you'd be up 997,000 plus whatever other scores. But you can see your leverage versus the field. So right now it looks like this account, the most leveraged position for you is Lonto Griffin, then Sungjae M and Scotty Scheffler, because you can see your ownership exposure of your 150 lineups and then the field. So if you're really grinding DFS, one of the best things you can do is study other top players, and you can see exactly who they're playing, how they did in certain tournaments, what they're doing in certain spots, and that's been a huge part of
that's really cool. Can you see? All right, this actually, man, I've like 5 other questions have come up. Well, first of all, before I forget, sponsored DFS player. How many people are sponsored DFS players, and what did that look like? Is it similar to poker, what you understand, where you get like some buy-ins? Do they give you rake back? Do they give you salary? Can you give me not specifics, but how does that kind of work?
Happy to give specifics. And we were very transparent about it. But basically, the thought was just like the poker pros. There's actually only like 4 or 5 of us. The program worked, and from my view, for like me and a couple guys specifically, but it never scaled out. Just because there was people always are like, oh, do they get some other information? And of course, people are skeptical. But yeah, we didn't get any entry fees or anything like that on DraftKings. But my personal compensation was cash, affiliate deal, and then I got equity in the company. And so the equity in the company was the looked like a zero for stretches of time, and now DraftKings is worth $28 million. So it's been a fun ride. But yeah, we did a bunch of content. So we did like live shows. We actually did events in Foxborough at the Patriots Stadium. Adam Levitan was a huge part of it. So Adam Levitan, myself, and Al Zeidenfeld started the podcast called the DFS Edge. At one point in 2015, when DraftKings was all the rave, it was the #1 podcast in sports. And yeah, that was a huge podcast. That was great. And so basically, we were just doing everything we could to promote the industry. And it was awesome for me. I got to go to a lot of poker events. That's actually how I met Mark Cuban. DraftKings and I split a buy-in into so I did get one piece of compensation was a buy-in into this Tiger Woods charity poker tournament. And so the first year, the luckiest thing that's ever happened to me is I drew the seat next to Tiger Woods and Mark Cuban. And that's how Mark and I became friends.
No way. Really?
Yeah. And that poker tournament literally has been like my luckiest moment ever. I didn't win that year, but I won a couple years ago, and I got to play golf with Tiger Woods in a pro-am. So I played golf with Tiger Woods last year for the Genesis because I won his charity poker tournament, which, by the way, it's an 11K buy-in. All the money goes to charity, and it's like the fastest structure ever. So like I think I was the chip leader at the final table, and I had like 9 big blinds. So it was just pure luck, like how it ends up playing out.
It is, but there's still a lot of skill on those stack sizes and whatnot. But
people are folding. People are folding. Like they have like 3 big blinds, and they're just they're just like trying to.
So you can take advantage. It's definitely, if you have like some understanding of game theory and what you're supposed to do in those spots, you can capitalize. You also can kind of tell who is going for it and who's folding, and like you get a lot of information in those charity events. Like people show what they're trying to do and what their motivations are, and you can kind of like you said, a guy's got 2 blinds and he's folding in the big blind when he's like whatever.
For sure.
So, yeah, it's
a little bit of skill, but like just super fortunate. That event's been like amazing, and I was wearing a DraftKings patch. So that was basically what the deal looked like, was to go around promoting DraftKings. I signed up a lot of people. Was just trying to tell my story. I genuinely was passionate about it. I gave away a ton of information. When we started Fantasy Labs, people were like, "Oh, you're hurting your edge," which is true. I mean, before launching Fantasy Labs, like 2014 was my best year. 2014, 2015 were my best years playing. And of course, the market's going to get more efficient over time. And, just like some of the top poker players giving out info but my view has always been, I'm much more interested in the business side. And it was really fun being like one of the top players for 3 or 4 years. And I still I've been fortunate to have some really good years past 2016. But the market's got more efficient, and I had certainly helped contribute to that. But to me, it was a trade-off that I thought helped grow the game, and also I'm much more interested in like the business side of things long term. So short-term negative, but long-term I think it was the right move.
Very interesting. I gotta say, there's just, it's such a fascinating world, DFS, to me, and I just want to understand what do you think is the most difficult sport in daily fantasy, in terms of like, if you're just casual, you coming in, you want to start messing around on Fantasy Labs or wherever, you want to start learning a bit or doing research, say you understand. I guess it's kind of hard to say, right? Do you know players? Do you know anything about it or not? But like, what would you just say is the most difficult to beat from, like, if you're starting at a neutral spot?
That's been changing over time. So the best sport initially, if you were competent, and like, let's say you were a poker player or something coming in early days, the easiest way to make money was probably NBA. And that's probably the hardest sport now. And that's because there's the least amount of variance in NBA. So like, in golf, or let's take baseball. Baseball is an event sport. Like, you could, the best matchup of the day could be a guy and he could go 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts, or he could hit 2 home runs. And like, obviously, if you keep making the right decisions over time, it'll play out in your favor, but there's a ton of short-term variance. Whereas in NBA, like, LeBron James's range of outcomes is very narrow. Like, there's obviously really good outcomes and there's bad outcomes, but it's, these guys are their range of outcomes is much more narrow given how the NBA works. So initially, like, just figuring out, okay, here's the guys who are out, here's their backups that are going to play 30 minutes tonight. Like, a lot of the field wasn't doing that. So if you just had a good sense of like minutes and all those things, you would just print. And now everyone knows that. There's all these sites like Fantasy Labs that are doing projections, that are updating things in real time. And if you don't know what you're doing and you're not really grinding and like basically putting in optimal teams or really thinking about game theory in the right way, you're going to get spanked. Like, you're just, if I played someone in NBA DFS that was just off the street that I hadn't played like NBA DFS before and didn't have access to a Fantasy Labs or another training site, I'd beat them like 95% of the time. Whereas in baseball, that might only be 60-some% of the time. In golf, it's probably like 55-45 if the person's spending all the salary. So I would think it's either NBA or baseball, even though there's short-term variance. Like, the person off the street could definitely win early, but like, all the number guys, all the modeling people are really good at baseball, and like, the same guys crush in baseball every year. So it's one of those two sports. I actually think golf is probably the best DFS product, and I think that's where the casual fan has like the best chance. And I love the golf product. Obviously, certain people are going to have an edge versus others, but I think the golf product's really good. They do a good job pricing, and like, it's pretty easy to make a team. Like, and you're like, in the NBA, if you're not knowing who's in and out and all that stuff, like, you're going to make some massive mistakes. It's hard to make like totally agree. There's mistakes you can make, but like, it's hard to really screw up in golf.
Yeah, I just looking here too, because this was like from a few weeks ago. I was telling you, we took 1st and 1 out of
so sick
5. Yeah, it was fun. It was the first.
How fun was it watching the like last like 9 holes of that tournament? Like every shot matters.
It was unbelievable. I just didn't. The thing that bothered me was the final. I told you I had Finau and Homa. This is my friend who really was the one picked all the lineups. I actually had one decision to make. It was like out of 4 guys. He told me just choose one. I didn't know any different. I picked I forget his name, but Naismith, I think it was, and I ended up picking him. He contributed and it worked out well. But again, I don't really know what I'm doing. But the one that was sick was this one was 50K to first, and we had the guy. So we had 526, but we had both guys first place points. So
look at that team. The rest of that team. That's a sick team.
Yeah, in the head-to-head. What happened was, so like, again, I don't really know how to compute. It could have maybe been worse, but I think we would have won if it had finished the other way because he had Homa and we had Homa, right? But then
you guys had Finau and he didn't. So you wanted Finau to win.
Right.
Because they both had first place points, which is huge. So you can see like finishing position is part of the points. Obviously birdies, pars, all those things are a big part of the scoring. But because both players were in first, they both had first place points. So it's actually bad when you have both the guys on your team when it goes into a playoff. The finishing points is kind of goofy. But if Finau wins, you guys win that one.
Yeah, I think that's what would have happened. But then again, I was like worried.
I don't know who's behind you and who has Finau.
Exactly.
You don't know how it exactly plays out.
I guess that's the way to look at it too, because maybe someone had whatever. It was the best. It was just like such a cool sweat. And I want to ask you about there's a Hendon mob, there's pocket fives, right, for poker and ranking and stuff. I believe I have a note that you won over 20 million worth of scores in DFS. Maybe it's more. I don't know. You probably know your numbers, but is there a site that does show you like a ranking leaderboard kind of deal? Like what's the
there's roto grinders, but it's strictly based on volume and it doesn't take into cash games. So like lifetime, I have like well over $100 million in like winnings, but that's just like, if you play 100K a night, like, some nights you win 200K or whatever, and some nights you win 0. And the Roto Grinders rankings is strictly gross winnings in tournaments. So there's never been like a P&L site that's been out there, and that's actually against the terms of service from like DraftKings and FanDuel. I've seen, people have scraped the data and tried to figure out the P&L of players. And, if you're immersed in the space, you certainly know like who's winning, who's losing. But there's not really a great place to like see who the best players are, but it's obvious. Like if you're playing a lot and like you can see on a lot of these sites, including that FantasyLabs dashboard or Roto Grinders, or there's a couple other sites out there that'll show like, here's what happened in tournaments. Like, so you can see that, and all the data is public. So
it's interesting. It's sort of like poker too, because they don't show, like the Hendon mob. It's like kind of funny with the high roller circuit and scene. And you see like guys like 30 million, 20 million earnings or 4 million for the year, but they might have 6 million in buy-in. So it's kind of like good and bad. But if they did do it, it might. I guess it could cause problems too for a bunch of reasons, and it's kind of better in general.
Like I had a higher rate. Like one of my worst year. I played a boatload of volume, so I was probably ranked higher on Roto Grinders than the year before, where I made a bunch of money just because I played more volume or whatever. So like, it can be very deceiving, and there are tons of guys that fire huge volume that obviously lose, and then for the most part, the guys who are really blasting are the top players. But it's a mix, and like just seeing gross winnings, as you know, it's just like, oh, here's this guy's tournament winnings. It doesn't tell the full story, and the cash games aren't tracked as closely. So a lot of initially cash games were extremely lucrative, and that's where I made the majority of my income, was more on like the heads ups and double ups and 3-mans. But those aren't tracked nearly as closely as the tournaments.
And what do you think about sites where you can sell action? Brandon Adams. So again, full disclosure, StakeKings site that I'm invested in. Brandon Adams also, we have some, we're involved. We're part of the site. We do some stuff. Brandon Adams posts and his stuff sells out. I actually put up action on StakeKings, and I was just like, look, I'm a semi-fish. I've won a bit. I got probably lucky, and I put up a little bit of sweat. People love it. Like that's, as a Twitch streamer, putting up action is really cool. Would you ever do that? Have you done that? What do you think about selling action to your fans? People that are like you, you're never going to like break down and talk to someone on Twitter, and it's too much work, right? But what do you think about partitioning or selling some of your action so your fans could sweat? Have you ever considered that? Would you do that?
I love StakeKings. I think Tyler's genius. I love that you guys are involved. I actually was thinking about doing it when it first came out, but I was still a brand ambassador for DraftKings, and they weren't as excited about me doing that. It's something I would definitely consider. I know some people have like been pretty predatory with charging like ridiculous rates. But I think the real value and what's cool is that people love the camaraderie, and I love personally, I think like the community and like sweating together and like getting alignment with people that you really respect is a great thing. So yeah, the economics of it, I think I'd like to see it just be really efficient, and obviously not everyone can justify their markup, but markets over time will feel that out. And I think it's a genius concept in terms of just like being aligned. And yeah, with DFS specifically too, like, a lot of people don't want to do the 2 hours, 3 hours of work or more, like, especially if you're playing NBA, like you need to be playing every day. Like there's a lot of edges of just like kind of following. It's not just, oh, I can sign up today and have it all figured out. So from a time perspective, I totally get like, hey, I want to sweat tonight. I want to, be aligned with this guy that I think is a really good player. So I love the business. And over time, I think my only issue with like the whole ecosystem is the people coming in just charging like outrageous markups and like preying on some of the people. But over time, that'll sort itself out.
Yeah, it's a little tricky. There was actually for a while we did auction style, but then it got so crazy because it's like sort of predatory where people don't really understand or how it works, and especially if you break it down and you're like selling say $5 worth of $1,000 package, people are bidding ridiculous numbers, and it just didn't really make sense because it wasn't didn't make sense. So I think there should be some governing and guidelines and understanding there, but it is kind of fun.
It's a unique challenge though too, right? Because there's obviously more demand for the top players. But like, yeah, some people might not understand it. So yeah, I get it. And I think it's a genius business, and I think it's really cool. And just broadly, I think we'll see a ton more of that stuff. Like, I think everyone's become an investor now. I think this pandemic, a lot of people had time at home. Obviously, stock trading skyrocketed, and all these people are investing in different things. And I think one thing that's really cool is like investing together in something. Like today I bought the max shares on Rally Road of like that signed Kobe piece of the floor from his last game. Like, and I invested with a bunch of my friends, and like we're all now aligned on the investment, and it's really fun. And I think people in general like to invest as a community, and that's one really cool thing about Stakings.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is fun to sweat with your boys, whether it's fantasy or anything. And
and I would gladly, like, you tell me something, hey Peter, this is like neutral EV, like you're not winning or losing. Do you want to blast off with your friends? I would sign up for that like all day long. Like I'm just like, I got the call any button checked on that spot.
Yes, no, I'm completely with you. Let's look over this article here and maybe talk a little bit about your career. I don't know how to like you said, the Hendon mob or scroll through, but I do know. Tell me a little bit about David Kaplan first. This head chopper. Is he one of the leading? Or he does a ton of content, or is this a friend?
Yeah, dude, he's one of the best dudes in the whole world, and he was honestly the top player when I first got in the space, like 2011. Chop was like a total legend, and it's been so fun to watch his career. Because, he went from like the top dog, and then the market got more efficient and he wasn't the top dog anymore, but was still having success. And, he's had some big scores up until whatever, the last 2-3 years. And dude, this guy's won $1 million now, I think 3 times. And also had the worst beat ever or one of the worst beats ever in DFS. I don't know if you remember the US Open when Dustin Johnson 3-putted from like 15 feet. I don't know if you remember that, but it was like a slider versus Jordan Spieth. And all he needed was Dustin Johnson to make birdie or better on the last hole. And the sweat was insane. He hits a perfect drive. Then he hits like literally the best shot you can hit. It's a par 5. So like Dustin's like a favorite to make a birdie. And perfect drive, then hits an unbelievable approach shot. Like literally just perfect to 15 feet. First place is $1 million. Second place, I believe, is $100K. So it's literally a $900K drop. And all he needs is a birdie. And Dustin, like, I think he was down at the time, he was down a stroke to Spieth. So if he makes birdie, he's tied with Spieth. And even if he loses, gets second place, that birdie was enough points to like put his lineup in first or whatever. And yeah, he 3-putted from 15 feet, including missing like a 2-footer. So imagine like the sweat of that, like watching him hit the perfect shot off the tee. You're like, okay, now I'm a huge favorite. Then watching him put it to 15 feet, you're like, I'm 98% for him to now, make me $1 million, and then he 3-putts for a $900K swing.
That's so crazy. And what about deal making? Because this is something also this article touches on, and I do again few points in this article that were interesting to me, and I want to talk about. But tell me about like this concept of the deal make, because in poker this happens. You can pause it. In fantasy it's pretty quick usually. I know sometimes at live finals, right? People will go and they're there, and so maybe there's some agreement before, or even like you're able to talk and do something. But what's your experience with deal making in DFS, and have you done it, and how does it work?
Yeah, so of course, yeah, swapping before events is very prevalent. I think the sites don't necessarily want that to happen, but it happens all the time. Just because you get in some big spots. I mean, some of these live finals, like the equity of one entry is like 100K. A lot of people get there, and maybe they have like a 200K bankroll and they have a 100K seat. Like it's pretty ridiculous to just like gamble 100K or 300K total bankroll on like one event. So the way they can hedge that out is by swapping or selling equity.
Right.
I haven't really seen many things like happen like in the actual event itself. I haven't done that personally, where like I'm like, oh, there's the guy who's in second and I'm in third or whatever. Like let's swap for now. I have never done that. I'm sure it's happened, but I personally have not done that. But yeah, tons of selling and different things for these events. And a lot of times, people sell too, and you can get into that markup game and whatever else for these live finals. But it makes sense because they're just such big spots. I mean, they're literally just massive, massive, massive spots sometimes for people. I mean, for anybody. I mean, those are those big events. And just given the nature of how big the seat values are, and people will come in with like 6 or 7 seats to these things. So they have a huge chunk of equity, and it's a ton of variance because a lot of these tournaments have really top heavy prize structures. So it's like, okay, it's 2 million to first, but then if you get like 40th place, you're getting 50K or whatever. So there's a big drop off, and that incentivizes swapping just because there's so much variance.
Yeah. Tell me a little about the payout structures too, because like I'm looking this week, and they had they don't do the $20 million that much. I maxed with my friend. We put in the most teams, and it's like 150,000 entries. You can put 150, so still pretty long shot to win. And you start doing the math. How big of a advantage is it, do you think, to max enter those, or versus at some point does it make sense to not? I mean, I guess the math it's so top heavy. It must make sense to max enter if you can, right? Is it for those or no? Do you do that when you come in, when you play those?
Yeah, I mean, if you're plus EV, it makes sense. And obviously, each entry in theory, right? Like one entry is worth, like your best entry from a game theory and projection standpoint is better than your next one and on the way down. But I do think that it makes sense still. And they're just really top heavy. So the one thing I can show you again later on down the road, but like you can see when you have duplicate lineups on that dashboard. And that's the worst thing that you can do in this tournament. I think it's a $2 million prize pool with $1 million to first or something like that.
Yeah.
See, it's like first or bust from like an EV standpoint, basically. So the worst case scenario is you're sharing a lineup with a bunch of people. So you really need to give yourself a lot of clean looks at just getting first place by itself. So that's something that I think, so it's not totally 2 million, it's 2.5 million, but still 40% to first. So like you want to make sure you have a really good chance to get first. And you'll see people end up having like there's a lot of duplicates out there.
Interesting. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. This and tell me about the payouts. What do you think on that? To $1 million, it's for marketing, or why not make it more bell curved and like different payouts? Like why is 1 million to 100? It's pretty intense.
Dude, it's so intense. And all the pros have been talking about that forever, almost, or the majority. Some of the pros who are game theory specialists, tournament specialists, like having the top heavy structure because you have to play a different way. But a lot of the pros advocate for a more even distribution because they don't want the crazy variance. If they're plus EV, they want to just grind it out, build their bankroll. But from a marketing standpoint, that's really what blew DraftKings up, to be honest. I mean, once they started doing $1 million to first, people just ate that up. And there's a lot of data on this. And DraftKings in particular is very data driven in terms of how they basically price and do all their contests. They know what's worked, and they very early on, they had a team devoted to like sizing and kind of deciding payouts for their tournaments. And the data overwhelmingly supports the really top heavy structure. And we've seen that specifically, like the contests that have blown up the most aren't just the millionaire makers, but like the $3 contests, that was $200,000 in prizes, $100,000 the first. So like people just love that lottery payout. I mean, that's why people play the lottery. That's why people do a lot of these things. People love to swing for the fences, and obviously that's, it requires a different strategy. And for someone like me, I'm much more of a grinder. It's not ideal, but that's the way they do things. And I've had that same conversation. I've always been the one advocating for like a more even payout structure, but for whatever reason, or not for whatever reason, but because people play the top heavy ones more, they continue to do those type of contests.
For sure. Have you heard of the Prize Picks by any chance? Are you familiar with this?
Of course. Yeah.
I invested in this one, and I like the over under and the parlay stuff, but where would you like rank this comparing to like the other DFS and is it for something like pros, or is it more for amateurs? Like what's your understanding of like this model and how this site works? Have you ever played on it? Do you ever dabble with any of these or not? The betting isn't so big, I think, the cap, right, on what you can wager.
Yeah, so I've messed around. I haven't actually played much volume, but first of all, kudos to you for investing in this. Similar sites, Monkey Knife Fight recently sold for $90 million. There's some really good fundraising going on companies that are similar, and I've heard great things about Prize Picks and the team, and it's a really cool concept. I think long term, now that we have legalized betting in certain states, I think we're going to continue to see more hybrid games that are crosses between fantasy and traditional betting, and they capitalize on something. People want that lottery parlay type payout, and Prize Picks does a great job with that. So I'm very bullish on hybrid games. It's something that I'm trying to do more of. I'm an investor in Underdog, which is a similar platform that started off doing best ball, but also has other games. Cuban's involved in that one as well. And yeah, Prize Picks, I think that's a great investment. And I think those platforms are cool. And I think we'll see a lot of innovation in different game types. So it's a good news situation, though. Like that Monkey Knife Fight sale in particular is great news for any Prize Picks shareholders.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the daily fantasy draft, which I was one of the ambassadors early on, I know Robert really well. I don't know if how familiar you are with fantasy draft, and they tried an interesting model with the sort of MLM format, which didn't really seem to catch on. I don't know. Did you ever do any of that, or were you ever?
Yeah, I played a ton on fantasy draft. I mean, they tried everything. They tried rake free hire contest. They did the MLM. They did the subscription model at the end. A lot of really good ideas. The issue for fantasy draft and what DraftKings really understood and what enabled DraftKings to catch FanDuel is it's just strictly a liquidity game, basically. So it's a really counterintuitive model. I'm really good friends with like Taylor KB and Andrew Wiggins. Andrew lives here in Colorado now. We ski a bunch, and draft day failed even with like those guys building a great product and obviously having all the poker experience. And I think they had a really good product and everything right, but they basically didn't invest they didn't go all in on like raising capital and burning the capital to inflate the ecosystem. I mean, DraftKings is still losing a bunch of money today. They're valued at $28 billion, and I think they lost like $300 million last year or something. I mean, I don't know. Don't quote me on any of this. I don't know not financial advice. I don't know the exact numbers, but their playbook from day one has been raise venture money, put that money into the ecosystem, grow the ecosystem, do the same thing. So they were just literally pouring gasoline on the fire, losing a lot of money to grow the ecosystem. And I think in reality, that was the right long-term play because now they have all these people, they have the infrastructure, and I think they could be a profitable company right now if they wanted to be.
Right.
And so everyone else that was kind of fighting against that was at a disadvantage. And a lot of people thought DraftKings guys were suicide bombers. And in reality, they took a really long-term view. And I think you've seen this in poker, you've seen this in any like peer-to-peer ecosystem. Like liquidity is king. Like people are going to play where there's more liquidity. There's tons of poker sites, DFS sites that have had lower rake, and they just don't get the traction relative to the places where all the people are playing. So yeah, fantasy draft, I think, did a lot of really smart stuff, and they did build up a decent ecosystem, but they were always overshadowed by FanDuel and DraftKings, and even Yahoo, which Yahoo has an ecosystem. They've never been able to get to like DraftKings or FanDuel for those same reasons, in my opinion.
And I mean, actually, so fantasy draft did end up selling to Monkey Knife Fight, I think,
yeah.
And then they sold right after. So
hopefully good outcome for everybody.
Yeah, I think so. And do you have any idea on that? So Monkey Knife Fight, they sold to who specifically, or what? Do you know what the deal kind of was with that?
I saw Monkey Knife Fight sold for $40 million. I think they sold to Bally's. Is that right?
Yeah, it was some site. Yeah, some Vegas.
Yeah, Bally's Corporation acquires Monkey Knife Fight, and I believe it was for 90 million, and it's because of the user base. And I could be, again, don't quote me on these exact numbers. This is just what I remember reading. But yeah, they sold to Bally's, and we just saw Super Drafts sold to Caesars. Brandon Adams just sold his site. So there's a really interesting thing going on right now where these operators for betting companies are trying to figure out ways to get customers in the states that aren't legal yet. And that's why I think, Prize Picks positioned so well, Underdog. A lot of these companies have users that are clearly willing to invest money, bet money in these different formats, but don't have legal states yet.
Yeah, it's a super interesting space. Well, I keep thinking of, it's actually really, there's so many things that I am interested in, and I keep thinking of new things, or one thing I keep kind of forgetting. So I just want to keep asking before it comes up and I forget again. So this article talks about some of your scores, and this is, you won $1 million. How many times? I know this article touches that you did win $1 million, and this was in baseball. I believe it was on this hit right here by Torin or
Mike actually hit a home run in extra innings that basically secured it for me. So I had a Red Sox stack, dude. It was freaking nuts. I didn't look like I was in position to win initially, and then the Red Sox kind of scored some runs towards the end, and then they forced extra innings. And I was the only one with like all these Red Sox guys really in a position to win. And they scored like 8 runs or something. I don't remember exactly how many, but a ton of runs in like the 14th inning. But it was capped by a Mike Napoli home run.
Napoli, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so that was a big score. From just changing my life perspective, that was right there. But I won the first 6-figure score actually on FanDuel in 2012, and that was right after I quit my job as a stockbroker. So that was like, hey, you can do this full time. That was honestly like the biggest score from like propelling me into pursuing DFS full time. But the $1 million win was at the right place, right time, and I've been fortunate to have a lot of big scores. I haven't had like a single $1 million win. I've had a couple $1 million days, but not 1 million in one contest outside of that.
Wow, cool feeling. That 7-figure club and daily. What are your parents and friend, like kind of family, friends? What do they think about this? And when you said, hey, I'm working at Charles Schwab, or I'm stockbroker, proud family, this and that, and then okay, I'm going to play games and daily fantasy, which is like new, right? It's not even like poker, which you can kind of form your opinions, and things have sort of changed. It's got like seedy kind of negative connotations in some respect. Sports betting as well. It's good to see it's legal at a federal level, and it looks like it's coming back full force. And again, anything responsibly, I think you can find a lot of benefits out of it, right? Like learning stuff, data, analytics, dealing with wins, losses. Like there's so many positives in general, I think, in poker, and again in sports and betting. Being responsible, it's good to have fun. It's good for some action. You got to set your own limits. But what did they think when you basically said, "Hey, I'm doing this full time"? How did that go?
Oh, I think this is a super fun conversation and actually gets into a lot of things I'm really passionate about now. Very fortunate to have supportive parents. My dad in particular saw the success I had in poker. He was a little nervous about that, like when I was playing a ton of poker in high school, in college, but saw the success I had. We bought a house together. Like my dad and I bought a house in college, like rent out to my buddies. So like he knew I was like really into numbers and was taking, I kind of explained like, here's poker. It's just a more inefficient market. I'm still taking a data-driven approach, and this is why I can win long-term. So he backed me. And then obviously, that moment where we got stood up and like poker was just in a bad spot. He was not even supportive, but just like, yeah, Peter, it's probably a good idea to like pursue something else in the short term. So getting the job at Charles Schwab was really helpful. And then, when I said, hey, I really am thinking about quitting my job and pursuing this full time, I gave the reason that this was the right time to take a risk. It's what I ultimately want to do. I don't have anyone I'm supporting other than myself. I have money saved up. So like they were really supportive, and they encouraged me to do it. Honestly, I did get a lot of skepticism from like, friends, parents, and other people like, oh, you're just gambling. Like there's such a negative connotation with it initially, but I feel like that's gone away to a degree. And one thing I want to do long-term in life is kind of help revamp the education system. And I think all these games are like the best learning experience you can have. I mean, I tell people I got a finance degree, but I studied poker in college, and poker taught me way more than, the classes in finance did. And even into investing today, like, we talked about some of the risk reward and handling ups and downs. Like those are really important things. Like if I didn't have the poker background, I don't think I would have had the same kind of emotional. I wouldn't be able to handle my emotions the same way I do now, and that's been amazing. Like I've been able to hold some assets that have had a ton of volatility and like not sweat the ups and downs. Whereas like my friends who've had a more traditional route, like they're the fastest ever to sell riskier assets. And I think the games are so great. Like I learned so much from poker. I learned so much from DFS. Like learning how to be a professional or bet with an edge. Like you have to be really disciplined. You have to take a data-driven approach. Like you have to be patient. You can't force things. Like all those lessons I've learned from games. And I think in general, human beings learn from games way better than they do from kind of traditional schooling. And I think financial literacy courses, budgeting, all those things should be a big part of education in middle school, high school. And I think games should be integrated into the education system too, because personally, that's where I learned the most. And I know a lot of friends who've learned a lot more from games as well.
Yeah, it's well said and really aligned there. Agree too. My dad and my mom, Ivy League background. I went the other direction. I went and played soccer in college and SEC school, and poker became quickly my passion. And they were luckily also very supportive, but it was kind of one of those things where it's not family's first choice generally. Like it's
of course
lucky and you have supportive parents and they trust you and they know that you're going to do the right things and you're it can help. But I know a lot of people that don't. It hasn't been like that, where they had to lie or not really say what they were doing, or even got a lot of backlash when they did. And that obviously is more difficult to penetrate and go further.
Real quick, because you have a similar story, and I didn't know that about you, but one of my business partners is a really good friend of Brandon Adams. I don't know if you've heard about these tennis prop bets that they've done, but one of my good friends was an All-American at Notre Dame, got to like 4th or 5th in the country in tennis. Played professionally for a stretch of time, but it was a huge grind. And in tennis, you actually don't make any money unless you're like top 50 in the world. So he was like losing money as like a top 200-300 player in the world. And he was playing poker. And I think his parents were not excited about him going the poker route, given he, played tennis his whole life in New York, went to Notre Dame, like did all this stuff. And like, It's not an easy transition to make, but like that same competitive spirit and like that type of mentality, like, it paid huge dividends for him. Now he's super successful. And like, I think he would credit poker as much as like tennis and all those, and even tennis. Like I love sports. I think you learn so much from sports. Like I'm not at your guys' level playing college sports, but played basketball, baseball, tennis in high school, still play basketball every day. Like I learned more from sports than I did in the traditional education system too.
It's so much. It's not, it's just like, it's more about, I think too, just like the camaraderie, the teamwork, the learning to win. Same thing, winning, losing. How do you handle other people's success when you have a bad game, when they have how do you, it's like golf. You golf with someone, you play poker with someone, you learn kind of pretty quickly how they handle themselves. Yeah.
You see more about someone's character on the golf course than like anywhere in the world. You get to see them in adversity. You get to see how they handle success. How ethical are they? Are they like, you learn so much about someone on the golf course.
That's exactly. And I think honestly, poker table might be the same or even more the same. It's like in that same kind of category, same thing, same sort of closed space. You get to see it all. So I really do agree with that. And I mean, and to speak about soccer though, I didn't like, and it's kind of one of those things too, where I didn't play in college really. Like I just didn't get along with my coach. It was a Bible Belt kind of place. All of a sudden I'm the poker guy. We just never really hit it off. Like I was captain growing up, most of my teams, and really good relationship with my coach. And then there, just like, I don't know, just didn't work. Didn't really get but it was great. I was playing poker. I didn't really have to worry about getting in the game. I was up late playing cards and go to practice, keep in shape, and didn't really get to play much at all. So, but whatever. Again, it's great. Sports.
You've been pretty successful, man. So it worked out. But that happens to a lot of people in athletics, right? Like,
right. Yeah, it was clear that was the ceiling for me. I was like, it was just like, all right. Really quickly, I realized that I wasn't going to be playing professionally, and that was fine. I was fine with it, and poker became the passion. So, I gotta ask though, this live finals, what is this like? How many live finals you've been to? Was it at the live final where you won the $1 million on this?
Yeah, so it's in the Bahamas. And I think I qualified for every live final from 2012 through 2017, with the exception of the last NFL final. My big learning lesson, and to show the variance in this, obviously those first years were like much more inefficient. And there's so many fun times, including parties at the Playboy Mansion, which Star Street set up. FanDuel ended up acquiring that deal. So like I went to probably 10 events at the Playboy Mansion, including my bachelor party, which was freaking one of the best times ever. There are events at, in Vegas before it was illegal to play DFS in Nevada. So there's events at like the Wynn and Aria and all sorts of cool things. There's great events in California. DraftKings did events for a while in Bahamas. What's the famous?
Atlantis or?
Atlantis. That's where I won. It's amazing. I can't recall that. But yeah, that event was at Atlantis. So there's all these really fun experiences. And that was part of the growth of DFS is like, hey, qualify for these big events. You could win $1 million in like the coolest setting. So it was a ton of fun, doing those events, met a ton of people. It was great for just kind of, building awareness in the space. Also for FantasyLabs, it was great brand building, qualifying and competing in those events. But a good story and just like a lesson about variance and like ego. Right after I sold FantasyLabs to the Chernin Group to form the Action Network, that was in September 2017. There were some really big events for DraftKings, and I actually lost over $500,000 trying to get into the NFL live final for DraftKings. Over 500K in buy-ins and did not get in. And that was chasing like a 75K seat in equity. And that just shows the variance because it's first or last in these qualifiers. And I never got first. And so you have to win your way into these finals, which is a lot of variance. And then there's a ton of variance in the final. And I haven't played qualifiers since that year. And that was during the crazy crypto run up, and I just sold my company and I wasn't tracking my numbers as closely until the end of the year. I actually didn't know how much I lost in those qualifiers until I ran all my data at the end of the year. And I was like, wow, this is something I should really be cognizant of. And I thought the opportunity cost of like going after those kind of changed relative to prior years where I thought it was really good for my brand. It was really fun to play all these events and like go to these things. Going forward, I was like, I'm going to cut these out because not only are you playing this really high variance format, which isn't suited to my play style, you're also paying for these like extravagant parties. Like the rake was high, plus the cost of the parties was baked into the live final seats. So
right, yeah,
they're still really fun. A lot of people go to them. I haven't tried to do it since 2017, but that was a expensive but really valuable lesson.
It's really interesting. And how does your weekly look now? Or, I mean, I guess there's different, it's hard to say that because there's different sports and seasons, but what volume are you playing now for a yearly basis then, like versus say 20, in the peak when you were playing the most volume? Are you still playing a relatively high volume or are you doing much less now?
So it's changed this year specifically. 2020, I played probably similar volume, probably like top 25 to 50 volume in the whole space. Played a bunch in NFL, had a good NFL season, played a lot of golf, which is my favorite DFS sport now. From 2012, 2013 through 2017, I actually had anxiety if I ever missed like any sport, any slate. Like I was playing everything, NHL, NFL, NBA, PGA. How I played esports during the pandemic, DFS, which I didn't know anything about esports, but found some information, thought I might have an edge, yada yada yada. So I used to really, really grind like every single slate, every single sport. 2020 it shifted a little bit. I've always been interested in business, and there's been a lot of opportunities. I've done a lot of angel investments and different things. And 2020 it started to shift where it's like, okay, maybe DFS doesn't need to be like my main source of income, like my main focus, but I still played a lot and I played a lot in the NFL. To start 2021, it's the least DFS I've ever played. I still love playing golf. I'm not grinding the NBA because of the commitment. I think you need to play every day to be competitive. I think the market's more efficient. So I'm not playing NBA right now. I still plan to play pretty aggressively this NFL season, but yeah, it'll be NFL and golf. And I'm really focused on all these businesses and from a just monetary standpoint, like investing and building things is much more lucrative now too. So, and also new kid, if you're in this space, if you're invested in certain things, like it's been a really good stretch of time. So not trying to it's not, I always want to grind, work hard. It's not that, the success is like diminishing the work ethic. I'm busier than ever work-wise, but I think I basically think there's better opportunities than grinding NBA DFS. I don't play hockey anymore, any of those things. So just golf for now, and I'll probably fire pretty hard in the NFL season.
Are you in golf? Right? Where did you play this week or no?
I actually did not play this week because the baby. I will be back on next week. I was firing super hard I've been firing really hard in golf for a long stretch of time, but I did not. I just bet this week. Golf betting is actually one of the highest volume things that I do, just in terms of dollars invested. So did the betting, but did not have time to do a good job with the golf. And candidly, I'm also trying to improve my gameplay. 2019, I think I was one of the biggest winners in golf. 2020, we started off really hot and then lost quite a bit during the COVID swing. And it's been a slow start to 2021. So I think I've done a really good job identifying. I think our raw projections are very good, but I'm doing a bad job with game theory. So have started some work to try to get better at game theory within DFS golf, and I want to make sure I'm doing a good job. And this week in particular, had more responsibility with the baby the last couple of days. So I almost just blasted off I was
gonna just think in my head. I searched you and I didn't see it, but I don't really know if I'm doing things right. Like, if
I'm not in this week.
That's what I was saying. Because me and my friend, I know how we do it, and we just doesn't take that long, and we ultimately put our guys. So that shows really big discipline that you're not just gonna flick in the 150 entries, and I'm sure you would be.
And also the other thing, to be totally truthful, if I just played 150 entries in the Millionaire Maker and we did well, I would be pretty tilted. I'm down well into the six figures already in 2021 in DFS golf. So I want to, part of it is if I'm going to play, I want to make sure I want to feel like I'm doing the right things again. And most of the tournaments this year, I normally have six figures invested. So that was the other part of it. I had, some projections and everything, and felt pretty good about the process in terms of raw projections, but again, don't feel great about game theory right now. So if I would have just played small and then won, there's a little emotional element to that too. And also I've just been losing. So I clearly need to, really, I need to dial into this. And there's also a lot of variance. 2019 hit a ton of big scores, did well in the majors. I had a decent Masters last year, but what I'm noticing is a lot of the plays where I used to get some leverage on are now a lot of the chalkier options. So almost need to figure out, okay, everyone's gotten better at figuring out who the best raw plays are. Now I got to figure out the next tier down where I can get some leverage versus the field.
It's really interesting. Yeah. And let me ask you about studying and group work. Cause I would pay a lot to be a fly on the wall with your stuff, but it's a little different than poker. Cause in poker, there's different situations, players. This is you're putting your lineup in. So do you have a group, or how do you discuss and strategize? I talked to Brandon a bit, and he was you can send me a lineups or send me something, I'll take a look. But it's kind of hard, right? Because you're competing in a way. You're not oh, here's my lineups, and then you talk to your friends, and then you compare or look at stuff, or how do you do that to help each other but not pick off each other in a way? You're competitors at the
So I've been fortunate to have some data share with some really sharp guys throughout in the industry, and that is a really big challenge. And one of the most classic comments you'll see is oh, those people are colluding together, they're working together. And it's so funny, some of the highest stakes guys right now, they actually have, entered the same lineup in these 5Ks, and everyone's oh, they're cheating. And it's you realize that if they have the same lineup, it's actually much that maybe they're so good that they can overcome having the duplicate to still be plus EV. But if it's 50K to first out of 100K and there's two people with the exact same lineup, that's only one lineup you have to get ahead of to get a chance at first place. So it's really funny how the whole market reacts to that. Obviously the sharp people realize it's good when you're competing against people that are using the same lineup. But yeah, data share is prevalent. There's all these different communities and sites where people are using a similar process. And honestly, everyone's gotten so much better. It's crazy how much more efficient DFS is now versus a couple of years ago, and way different than people had no clue in 2012, 13, 14, 15. It was night and day difference in terms of where the market is now. But yeah, I talked with a couple people, and I've worked with people on models, and obviously we have FantasyLabs, which contributed a lot of IP to, and it's a process, and absolutely there is that interesting little conflict. I shouldn't say little, but there's a conflict of talking to your friends if you're competing, and yeah, Brandon's a perfect example. We've talked at the live finals, oh, what do you think about this guy? And you're competing against them, but they're also your friends. So it's way different than poker, way, way, way different than poker. And also too, I think one challenge with the industry that has evolved is that, the top guys can sit every single table. Like you're never going to find Galfond in like a 50-cent $1 game, right? Because there's only so many tables that he can play. But in DFS, especially early on, like I can sit every game from $1 down to the 10Ks. Now they've made it so that you can't play $5 and under if you have X amount of winnings, and they've limited how many games you can play at each stake. So they've made adjustments to kind of limit how much like the top players can get in, but it's so much easier to scale in DFS than it is in poker.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Do you think that having a background, if you're a newcomer in poker, is it an advantage for DFS in any way?
Huge, massive. I mean, that's why I think that was the foundation for why I had success. Bankroll management, game selection, thinking about things in an analytical way. Like I saw a question on Twitter, like people didn't even know to look at the lines. I think I had a big advantage looking at like Pinnacle and Chris like early on and like baking that into how I was doing projections. I mean, I just had very basic spreadsheets when I first started off, and like a lot of it was derived from looking at sharp markets and like, yeah, just being in the poker community, you knew that. And like, I'm telling you, the biggest mistake I've seen a ton of DFS players make, and some poker players, but it's much more prevalent of like the guys who are strictly DFS players, is they'll hit a big score, and then they'll be like, oh, I'm just going to battle and become, I'm going to be the top dog. I'm going to play the other best player for a bunch of money. And it's like, you're clearly not winning versus the rake, and it's all ego driven. And I feel like a lot of times poker players are like aware, like, hey, I'm not going to go freaking heads up for rolls versus the other top pro. I'm going to try to find softer games. And like DFS, I've seen so many people go bust that have had big bankrolls and just, basically taking their ego and try to, dethrone whoever the top guys at the time, and they go bust.
Right. And there's got to be a lot of, it's similar with, in the same respect of heads up, right? Galfond, we mentioned you're betting on him a bit on some matches, and heads up play, you saw Negroni Polk, and it's different formats. So same thing where someone's a heads up in a match versus the millionaire versus a 100-person field size. These are all very different strategies because the lineups are different, right? You're not just going to go chalk in a heads up match versus the millionaire maker or whatever. So how big is that, would you say, in understanding that difference, and that a lot of people don't really think like that? Is that a big
massive, and it explains kind of my trajectory and why I've done things. So I think my strength has been identifying like the top projected lineups. I think I've done a great job throughout playing DFS of having really solid projections. I've always had an optimizer. So I've done a great job of basically, here's the top lineup for the slate that I'm playing. And obviously that's evolved. So like heads up, that's still the game is like, what's the top lineup for the day? You play that versus other people. And, initially like the lineups are wildly different. Now, if you're playing heads up in these cash games, like everyone has like basically the same teams. The market's gotten really efficient. So that strategy and like making money that way has gotten much, much harder than it used to be. And that's my strength. And I actually used to play those lineups in tournaments, and it used to be wildly plus EV because it was not only my top lineup, which I thought was better than other people's top lineups. People weren't playing those guys, so I was getting good ownership and good leverage versus the field, and I was crushing. It was like the easiest money ever. And over time, everyone kind of figured out who the best plays were. The projections got very similar. So then it became more about game theory. And that's where I think I haven't done the best job. I think I've done a decent job in certain spots. I think I do a much better job on game theory in NFL versus like some other sports. But like that's what I was just talking about in golf. I think I was way ahead of the curve broadly in golf projections. And now there's been a big convergence in terms of kind of who the top plays are. Like the guys I like most every week are almost always like the most heavily owned guys. So now it's about adjusting with game theory. And like that millionaire maker, Rom and Rory or whoever else might be clearly a better play than X player. And but if you get the one guy at 3%, the other one's 30%, like you're probably better off playing the 3% guy. So figuring that stuff out is really, really, really important. And that's where I'm trying to get better. And just looking at my results, I mean, that's where I know I need to improve.
Is there on FantasyLabs, is there a site, or what's the best way to sort of look at someone's results? And you said, so like after this finishes, like this is my 100. Yeah. Yeah.
So you can see like your ownership. So like Lonto Griffin, you have at 30% and he's only 4% owned. So like, that's a really good play. Like, you know, that you're getting great ownership. But you can see the inverse. Like if you click that leverage column, you'll see like, and I guess some of this stuff is bad, but like your worst play just from an ownership standpoint is probably Tony Finau, right? 24% of the field took him. You have 24% too. Like you're not gaining any advantage there. You know what I mean? And like, yeah, Tony Finau is clearly a good play at that price. Just from like a projection standpoint, like 9,100 versus projection, like he's going to stand out. And that's where my model would say, okay, Tony Finau is who you should play. But if he's 24% owned, is he a good play? Because now a quarter of the field has him, and like you're not gaining that much if he does really well. And if he does badly, all the people who don't have him are jumping up. So that's where I'm like, if you look at like the guys who have like the top exposure, you can sort by exposure right there.
Okay.
So you can just see the highest, the scroll down to the right. Yeah, the exposure just up a little bit. That. So, okay, so like Answer's the most high, these are the highest owned golfers this week, right? So these are all guys that would like pop in my model as like the top plays to play this week based on just their projection and their salary. But everyone else has figured that out. So who out of these guys are you not going to play? Like, how are you going to figure out which is bad chalk, which is good chalk? And that's where DFS has really gone. And yeah, it's a bigger challenge. The edges are smaller, and it's much more of a game theory exercise versus projection exercise that it used to be.
And is there a way though on here to, so you said like on this site, can I see like the week where I won, for example, did well?
The Genesis is what you did well. And I think that was like early February. Is that right? Or middle February?
Yeah.
Genesis open in 2021. So you click the date. So that was February, started February 18th. So if you go to that page and you click February 18th, so just, yeah, you can even click the calendar. You type that in, that should work. Yep. So then you can go to that tournament, right?
Okay. So I would put in, right. Okay. So then you would search
whatever tournament you did well in.
I think this one, maybe we won.
You might not have been in any of these tournaments because based on I saw you do well in like that. So yeah, that one you had the 4 unique. Try that $15. Maybe you did well in that $15.
Maybe it was the week before.
No, this is. I'm positive this is right. Check the $15. Because you won like the tour, like you won like a $200 thing. I think maybe not.
Maybe it was a different week because yeah, it's saying or no, I don't know. Yeah, I thought we won the 555.
You won like the $200. So that's the one downside is like on that page, you won like maybe type the last 3 days. You won the driver. But you had a good score in the signature hole. That completed the 18th. Maybe you change the date on that. Maybe it was let's see here.
Was it the week before?
Yeah, try like 215 or something like that on there. Let's see here. Great advertisement for FantasyLabs, but somehow our dates are screwed up.
No, I think this is a week before. Maybe is it 211 or 2?
No, that should be right. Hold on here. I'll do the same thing. But yeah, you can go through and actually see all the different data there. Let me just pull up and hope that there's not some bug in the system here. So it ended the
site, whatever it is, it's cool, like how it works. I mean, you can already see that it's valuable.
Just go farther. Go farther. Click on like the 21st. Let's see here. Yeah, I think this is right.
Am I on the right day? 221.
And what's your username one more time?
Kid who won.
What is going on here?
It's honestly, it's not a big deal. The thing I want to understand is how to, like what you were just saying about the data is super interesting, how to like review it and see, like to use that information, and that it's sort of that's like what it seems hard to win if you're not doing some sort of analysis and work, right? Like obviously
yeah, I'm looking at the leaderboard for this, and I'm wondering why. Because I'm looking at if you pull up your screen again, you had a big score in the signature hole, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's weird. Let me see here one more time.
Yeah, well, it's honestly, I see.
It's not a good look that this is broken if it's the case. And candidly, too, I'm not as active in the day to day now, but this should be right.
Yeah, it's all good. Like my friend who I mentioned is like, he's really good at golf. Like he understands and he's just in it and knows what's happening. And then, I think like if you mix like a good feel with this type of analysis and data, it's just like, you're just going to do really well. Cause like, obviously it's good to understand the players, kind of understand what's going on. Like my friend is just like a nut. Like he knows who plays well on what courses. He's really immersed in it, but you got to have, I think, as well, the piece of this data, right? And you got to do some of that stuff. Like obviously, it's been cool to do well without it, but like we did use like a lineup plug. I told you on Roto Grinders, plugging in, setting the lineups. But this stuff is super interesting to me, and I think it's actually what makes it so fun is if you're actually really researching and diving in and making some, seeing what the other good players are doing and see how close you are to them, and it's fun. So.
Dude, it's by far the most fun, and I legitimately think this is broken because I'm looking at the. Can you pull up that contest just real quick, and then we don't have this line.
I love that golf is your main thing. I thought it was baseball, but that's cool. So I'm gonna, listen. I want. Don't worry. I might be blowing up your phone, man. I'm gonna say, hey, what do you think of this lineup? You're gonna be like, this guy's annoying.
I love it. I love it, bro.
It is fun. It's so fun to me. I love it.
It really is so much fun, and the most fun thing with DFS for me specifically is golf, and that same scenario you were in at the Genesis, where like every shot matters. Like you're not only rooting for your guys, but then the guys like basically anyone who's in contention that's not on your team, you're rooting against them. Like,
yes, exactly.
You're sweating every single shot.
That drop, which I still would love. Like I told Brandon, it was funny because I had lunch with him the next day, and I had never had any like significant fantasy score, and so I was talking and showing to him, but I don't know how I could. It would have been nice to know in real time. We couldn't figure out what we were sweating. Like it was like we didn't know, and then it was weird because I was trying to look at teams around, but when you play in these this was a 1.3 entry field, right? So like you just don't know what's going to happen. Like something goes one way, and it could just like move you down to. So I was just like, man, I want it to end. I'm happy with the 110K score, but then it did drop, and I just hard to believe with you got 1-2 that it could really mess up that much. But either way, whatever, it was.
It's just because you had those two guys that were tied for first. So that's the only time, or the thing to watch when you're sweating golf for your team is when your guys are in the same place or they're tied for a score. Like obviously people can tie for second and you can still get like the points or whatever, but tied for first can't happen at the end of the tournament. So the biggest thing to like watch, and like, dude, you can have wild swings. Like I've seen where, there's a 3-man playoff, or like 4 guys are tied for first going into the last thing, and you have 2 or 3 of them, and then one person leads them, and then all your guys drop. So the finishing scores can be bad. But
yeah, no, it's cool. It'd be fun to get in like a little chat somewhere with maybe Brandon and you, and just sort of bounce off some stuff with my friend. And
do you like to play golf yourself?
I do. I'm not very, very. I've been taking lessons. Like I'm okay. I can get out and play now. I used to be really, really bad. Actually, Hank Haney. I don't know if how well you know him. He told me I
know Hank Haney, of course.
My friend was doing the show with him, and I got to be around, and we had a good time, and he told me I had the worst golf stance he's ever seen his entire life. That's what he told me. So I've come a long way from there. I can now I can play a bit, but I'm always trying to get better. I love games, and it's a great game. So yeah, I can play.
Dude, we gotta set up. We do a golf trip every year with Brandon and some buddies. It'd be really fun to get a crew. And I have a bunch of friends at Southern Highlands in Vegas, which is Aguirre has actually just moved there, but like Ben Lamb and Shane Sigsby and that whole crew's out there, and it'd be fun to get a good group of guys together. And the fun thing about golf is like, as long as you have an idea of how good you are or how bad you are or whatever, like you can always set up a game.
Fun
and I'm not great. I got 10 handicap, and Brandon's battled with us, and Brandon is like super high variance with his golf game. So it's fun.
Southern Highlands that's a nice place. I actually lived there one summer. I rented a house with some friends in Vegas before I bought a place in Vegas, and it's cool. So there's Shadow Creek. There's some other cool
Shadow
spots.
Creek is amazing. That's where Tigers events always are.
Yep, that's we'll definitely have to do that. We'll play with this later and look at it. But anyway, you see how
I just sent an email. It's clearly broken.
Okay, so we'll get that.
I haven't seen it be broken. I've sampled this before too, and I don't know what specifically is going on, but it will get fixed. And Ryan Patsko, who actually was a company we acquired, he built that, and I just sent him a note. So poor for FantasyLabs there. I appreciate you doing it, but it'll be fixed soon.
Nice. No worries. And what about Action Network? Because this is something that I have seen. I got the app. I didn't realize, until recently you were involved with it, but it seems like really good content, and they put up some nice stuff. And it's what is this, and how does this play with FantasyLabs, and what's the deal here? What's your involvement in that?
Yeah, so FantasyLabs was one of the companies that was under the Action Network umbrella when we sold the company to the Chernin Group. The Chernin Group owns like Barstool and a whole bunch of other media outlets. Peter Chernin is a wildly successful person in Hollywood, and they've done a ton of really smart strategic investments, including like Headspace. And obviously, Barstool has been a grand slam. That's they bought 51% of the company at a $12 million valuation, and they sold to Penn or deal at like 400 some million, and obviously Penn and Barstool have just skyrocketed since then. So Chernin Group, awesome guys. They've crushed it. They put together the Action Network because they were bullish on the legalization of sports betting. Is the Action app, FantasyLabs, and then a company called Sports Insights, which is basically like a Don Best screen to compare prices, like high-end sports betting tools. And yeah, the app is incredible. Shout out to Brian Mead, who is the founder of the Action app and who's the head of product there. And yeah, it's basically just media, tools, content, all these things for sports bettors. I think the app is incredible, and yeah, it's been really fun to watch the journey. I was involved heavily with the media side. We had a show with the PGA Tour. I'm no longer doing that, but that still goes on. It's called The Gimme. And yeah, there's, if you're interested in sports betting, they're covering it from all angles. It's a big company now. I think close to 100 people. And yeah, Patrick Keen's the CEO. He's been on the board of a variety of companies. He's been very successful, and they just have a really good team there. So still an advocate for Action Network, even though it's not my day-to-day anymore. But yeah, in particular, I think the app is like the best place to sweat sports. The same Brian Mead, who I shouted out just a second ago, who built the Action app, he actually built the Yahoo Sportacular app too, which is where one of the main guys from Chernin Group, Mike Kearns, he came from Yahoo. So I used the Yahoo Sportacular app forever, and then switched over to Action, and it was really cool to partner with them. And I think the Action app is a really, really useful tool.
I see Darren Ravel mention, or he's involved, or he's always pushing it. So what is he like? What's his involvement there?
Yeah, so he was brought in maybe 2 years ago, and yeah, I know Darren's polarizing. I had a polarizing view on him initially, but after working with him, he's so passionate about what he does, and I've gotten really into like the NFT and collectible space, and that's where he's truly super passionate. And obviously, he's done all the business reporting, and yeah, he's got a big audience, and there's a lot of people from ESPN at the Action Network, and because of that, it was a natural fit for Darren. And yeah, Darren is, again, polarizing guy, but I have the utmost respect for him and how hard he hustles. He is grinding around the clock, and kudos to him for being early on sports reporting. And I know social media and all that stuff has different approaches. Unique one, but he's clearly been successful in growing his following.
Yeah, I mean, him and Gary Vee. Gary Vee is Mr. NFT. Gary Vee is a guy that he's just everywhere on every platform, and he's got a full team, and he seems really, really bullish on NFTs. And I was talking with a few of my close friends recently about NFTs, and it's kind of hard to wrap your head around. I love sports. I love Bitcoin, blockchain, that type of technology. So it's kind of a perfect thing, but it's still even the NBA Top Shot. I don't know if you've heard of OMI. Have you heard of this Vive? This one as well?
Which one?
It's the app is called VEVE, but it's like the comics, and they got Pokemon, I believe, the rights for NFT, and also the NFLPA. So cool. It's an interesting one, but yeah, I've been pretty deep in that. And Dapper Labs, obviously, I bought some Flow. That's the name of my show, Poker Flow Show. I had to get some Flow tokens.
Yeah,
and figure out a way to get it. It's a little complicated because you can't get it in the US. But anyway, like I'm very bullish on these as well. I think there's a lot of upside, and I do think the NFT. You saw the Beeple goes for 69 million. Gronkowski does his own NFT, has to take off the logos. With how he did it, but then Steve Aoki also just had an NFT, did really well partnering with Art. So it's going to be interesting to see the CryptoPunks, all this stuff. Like, will it will it be able to, I think it's a little bit Bitcoin doing so well, of course, is in Ethereum that helps, but it's kind of interesting to see where it's going to go. And I think there still is a lot of upside. People seem to not know where to spend their money these days as well. And it's like it just makes sense, Generation Z and what people want to do. And it's just exciting time. So I did want to talk a little more about the NFT stuff, but is there any advice, or how would you describe NFTs to those watching that maybe heard of it? Non-fungible tokens. What is it? Why do you like it? Why do you think it's going to be successful? If you do think that.
Yeah. I'm extremely bullish on NFTs as a whole. We did just see this mania phase. I think we're in the very first inning overall on NFTs, but maybe to use the analogy, like we're in the 8th inning of like this first wave of mania and prices. If you're into crypto at all, I think it's very analogous to kind of the altcoin boom in 2017. A bunch of bad actors, some bad projects, but some really innovative stuff. And like you look at the projects that survived from 2017 and seeing what they're doing now, it's pretty incredible. And I think as crypto evolves as a whole, we'll look back and kind of just see how much innovation was created out of the tougher times, but also obviously people getting interested during the bull markets. So we're definitely in the bull market right now. Who knows how long this specific wave will last? But yeah, I'm extremely bullish. I think the best part about it is it directly connects the artist with the consumer. I've built a really good relationship with one of the top artists on Super Rare. I'll send you a link here. But yeah, if you go to Super Rare, superrare.co/MBSJQ, it's awesome. Like, I think this guy's art is just absolutely incredible.
/ what? MBSQ?
I'll send you the exact link in there you go. One sec. Yeah, /M is in Mary, B is in boy, S is in Sam.
I got it. I just clicked it.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, click on his collection so you can see at the bottom there, view all his creations. Or actually go back to this is the only one he bought, but his creations at the bottom there, view all artworks created by him. So that top one is actually like someone just bid like 136,000 on that guy, which is really cool.
Sick, dude. These are sick. So
yeah, I mean, to see some of this stuff, like, so a couple of my friends are like really gravitated towards this guy, and he's had a ton of success, and he has a baby girl, and his whole motivation is his daughter, and we've become really close. And I own one of his pieces, and it's freaking awesome, man. So that direct connection, I think, is great. We're seeing that in music as well. We saw it with Kings of Leon. The Blau NFT auction was really cool. So I love that. It's basically cutting out the middleman for our artists and creators. And some of these projects are really interesting, like Top Shot. I think the Punks long term will hold a lot of value because they're the first NFT, the rookie card, and just the story is very compelling. There's going to be a bunch of crap, but especially in art, just buy what you love. And like Beeple's work, I think, is sick. 69 million is a ton of money, but wow, it's cool to see the growth there. And I think a lot of trends are here to stay, and it's just the kind of future that we're going through with everything becoming digitized.
Absolutely. Well, I got one more question for you, and then I know you got to get going here pretty soon. So I do want to at least get a couple questions. In the meantime, I'm going to load up this giveaway, giving away $55 ticket today. So I'll get this loaded up. We'll let you pick that on your way out here and get it queued up. And people can still get in and retweet, ask you a question. We'll take some of those. And while I'm loading up a few of these questions, tell me about winning the TGR charity poker tournament in July 2020. And in general, talk about tournaments being a positive thing with sports, the toughest opponents. You mentioned this a bit earlier. This was the Tiger Woods one. This is one you actually won, and this was just last year?
I won the poker tournament in 2017. So the first place prize is playing golf with Tiger Woods. If you remember in 2017, that was kind of when Tiger was having some, he had that DUI and just was clearly having some challenges. I actually won the year where his charity still put on the event, but Tiger wasn't there just because of his back and just everything going on. So It took some time to actually play golf with Tiger, given just his health and everything. But I was fortunate enough to play actually the tournament that you just won, RIB, that really cool course. That's where I played with him. So it was for the Pro-Am. And talk about, a nerving experience. You're playing golf now. You know how things can go well and bad. I think I shot a 39 on the front which is like very, very, very good for me, especially considering the circumstances. And then I shot $1 million on the back, including some really embarrassing shots. But it was a great time, and Tiger's awesome. And I'll be going to his charity event every year that I can. And yeah, I've been like four or five times. Only missed 1 year because I ruptured my Achilles. So I couldn't go out because I couldn't walk. But yeah, Tiger's great when he gets a fast, speedy recovery. And if you ever have a chance to be involved in that event, it's a couple of days of golf at Shadow Creek. There's a really cool charity auction. There's poker. There's a party. Like they've had really cool concerts. It's a really fun event.
That's awesome. Well, and again, I know you got to go in about 5 minutes, so I just want to try to get a couple of these rapid out questions, guys. I appreciate you taking the time. And again, we're going to do this giveaway here. We got a question right off the bat from Marco, the man, the myth, Ghost of M, and he's in the chat as always, asking how much DFS pros take sports betting lines into account when they're analyzing lineups.
Tons, and it was so valuable early on. I thought it was one of the biggest edges that I had was leveraging the really important data from the sports books. That baseball big win I had, the Red Sox team total had steamed on Pinnacle. So it's just like, oh, Red Sox, that's an interesting one. And like, I leverage that information heavily. And, I think those markets are pretty efficient, and there's a lot of good data from the betting markets. I mean, I was looking at player props initially, like, oh, here's what they think for points, rebounds, and assists. So like, those markets were really helpful and kind of figuring out how to project players. And that was a big part of how we built FantasyLabs as well.
That's very cool. What sport is the most profitable, from Augustin Lacourt asking here? I guess, it depends, right? For who and what, but you were mentioning golf, you think maybe, or that's the most variance?
I love golf. That was, before the most recent downswing, like one of my best ROI sports ever. I'd say NFL is probably the best sport for the average person. It's by far the biggest market with the most unique. So if you're willing to grind, NFL, I think there's still quite a bit of edge out there. And that's historically been probably the best sport for most people. And then, NBA used to be an incredible sport if you were like really working hard. And I still think that can be the case if you're like, hey, I want to be a DFS player full-time. I've had some success. If you're willing to go all in on NBA, there's definitely still big edges there, but it's a big time commitment. And the edges are smaller than they used to be.
Very interesting. Favorite place you've been in the world that you visited?
Favorite place I've been in the world? The place I bought part of the New Zealand Breakers like 4 years back. I really wanted to go to New Zealand. That's where I want to go. My traveling experience is pretty marginal. I've been like basically everywhere in North America. I'd say my favorite place in the world is Kauai. It's my favorite island of the Hawaiian Islands. You can pick somewhere in the Caribbean for me too, but I need to do some more international travel. I've just done I've been Mexico, Canada, the Caribbean, been all over North America. I've been to every state but Alaska in the US. But we actually had plans to go to Italy for my wife and I's honeymoon. And then I had the ruptured Achilles, so we couldn't do that. We had a trip planned in March to go back to Italy. That got canceled because of COVID. So I need some more international travel. I want to go to Japan. I want to go to New Zealand. What's the favorite place you've been?
Probably, I think Istanbul or Melbourne, Australia. Those are two. Actually, Montreal is like a easy one that's close, or at least in North America. And that I think is one of the most special cities. Just a great place. Have you been there?
I haven't, but I was tempted to. I was either going to say Vancouver or Kauai is my favorite place that I've been.
Yeah, Montreal is special, but that's also one. Also nice to be single if you were single, which we're both. We're past that part of our lives. That would be probably the place I would live if I were just like playing online poker and single. But a lot of great restaurants, great food, great vibes. Sort of like the only European city in North America, at least in my opinion. So all right, let's take.
I need to check it out.
Yeah, it's cool. Actually, they have a great poker events there. Once COVID gets back, it'd be fun to go to Playground Poker. It's over the border, it's Kanawaki, so it's like 20 minutes outside of Montreal. But that was somewhere I was going like 3 to 4 times a year since 2012 till 19. So I highly recommend there. So that's one to check out. Let's take one more, and then I know we got to go. Let's just do the giveaway. And as I'm queuing up this giveaway, because I know you got to buzz out here pretty soon. The question is, what is the difference between the good DFS players and the great DFS players?
Discipline. Great. And now it's the best modeling and game theory. But yeah, I think there's a lot of talented people. And I mentioned how I thought ego really hurt some people that were really great players. Some of the like the top of the top players ended up going bust because of ego. So yeah, discipline, game selection, all those things. And then of course, the best models are definitely winning now. And if you're good at game theory.
Okay, well, I just messed this up. And I know you do have to go. If I can go through this real quick, we are going to pick this up. All right, we're going to do a $55 giveaway party poker ticket coming up here. And Mr. CSURAM88 Peter Jennings is going to do this. If this works, it works. So I think I must have clicked the wrong button before. We're going to download these retweets. So you got almost a 2% chance eligible and no tweets found. So the site is not working, and that is not fun. And we're going to do something else. We'll do it this way then. How about I'm just going to scroll and then
I'll turn around. I'll tell you.
Turn around and you say when and when my mouse. I'm just going to right here. And it's in a different language. So that's a cool. I'm sure it's a great question. It looks like he's something about COVID and hoping to get a ticket, but he is gonna get it. So my friend Tati from somewhere foreign with a foreign language, looks Spanish, is gonna get this message. We're gonna message him the win. We're gonna thank you very much. This was a pleasure. I hope to have you on again in the future, and I hope to meet in person, maybe some golf, maybe some DFS chats. And yeah, man, I really do appreciate it. I learned a lot, and this was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, Jeff. Like I mentioned before, I've watched a lot of your content. You do a great job. And dude, we would have a ton of fun playing golf, drinking beer, whatever. We're cut from the same cloth, and keep doing everything you're doing. And I'm going to hit you up on the golf chat. We got to start a group thread with Brandon Adams, and we'll find a time to be together soon.
I would love to add two of my buddies in. And again, you can kick them out anytime. If any one of us asks too much, because they're going to be like kids in a candy store looking at, like getting to pick the brains and whatever. So we'll try it out. And if you got to boot it or end the chat, I get it. We'll be
I'm all about it. I've always been, anyone who's passionate about this stuff is a winner in my book, and always happy to chat about this stuff.
I love it. All right, man. Thanks again. I appreciate it very much.
Thanks,
Have
Jeff.
a good one. All right, guys. That's Peter Jennings. Give him a follow on Twitter. That is CSURAM88. I have had 3 podcasts this week. I am absolutely loving it. I love that we moved to Twitch. It's good to see you guys. Let me give a few shout outs here before we close up the podcast. I see the Toothless Grinder. We had Pappy Van Winkle 23 in there. Adrock 412. Ghost of M, of course, as always. Aguilec, thank you for the questions. My man, Horror Field, and he is in joining OIMA 2015. There's a lot of you guys, not going to shout everyone. Just want to say thank you for being here and appreciate you very much. T Dubs 224 in the house, M Burnsy 23. Good to see you as well, guys. Thank you so much. I probably have 2 or 3 next week. Going to maybe play some poker on Sunday. We got DFS sweats. I know some people have action on DraftKings sitting okay. Big day today on day 2 of the action. Of course, as I showed, hit some good scores recently, but no means a pro. Going to try to use some data analytics along with a couple of my friends that are, I think they're borderline geniuses and just natural ability, but it can't hurt to add some data in. And of course, it's competitive out there, but a lot of luck and variance involved. So again, thank you so much, guys. More poker streams with review coming. We'll do some more podcasts. I got a new YouTube video up on the Jeff Gross Poker site. We also have some pending tweets to do and give away as well if you want to check that out on Twitter. So again, thanks so much. Thanks for everyone being here. We'll see you very, very soon. And I am going to real quick look at who is on streaming. Let me just see. Because we have... Yeah, we'll send my man Team Turbo Kings the raid, and we'll see you guys very soon. So appreciate you. And all the best. Enjoy your weekend. I forget it's a delay, and I'm usually on a 6-minute delay. So Sadaji, separation anxiety. Let me load that up. I'm going to ship him the raid. Say what's up to Brian, and we'll see you soon. Pappy, peace, man. Thank you. See you guys.